Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, a Cadence independent media production, Cymbal Series Day. Today, near and dear to my heart, we're talking about hi-hats, but not just what are they, what do they do, but actually like, how do we get the sound out of them that we're looking for? Hi-hats, plural. There's two of them. When you buy hi-hats, usually it's two cymbals. They're factory matched, or at the very least, the factory put them together as a pair to some degree. And the idea here is that they work together. They're a versatile instrument. It's two instruments working together to do this job. There were lots of historical versions of this, things on the floor, other stuff. What we're talking about today is actually something that I'm surprised how many people are uncomfortable with, and that has to do with getting away from the idea that you need a matching pair, getting away from the idea that you need them to even be the same brand, and instead treating these like ingredients where you have one, a second, and together they make a third sound. And the end game here is to have versatility and also to have some options without having to have a ton of sets of hi-hat cymbals. All right, first off, I want you to hear the combination that I have up here right now, which is basically my oldest set of hi-hats that I use. So let's talk about what this is. Right up front, it's not a matched set in any way, shape, or form. This is a pair that I just was putting together things at a store. It made me happy, and here we are. The bottom is from a set of Masterwork Jazzmaster cymbals. If you're not familiar with Masterwork, it was one of the many Turkish companies that came out of the boom of Turkish cymbals in the last, 15 to 20 years. And I got them from Jerry Garcia in Seattle. Yes, there's a drummer with a shop in Seattle named Jerry Garcia. And I played the pair for a long, long time. And after a little while, I felt like the top was lacking, but the bottom was just the right thing. No matter what I put on top of that bottom that wasn't the one that came with it, pretty much made me happy. So for a long time, I had that bottom and I would trade out things on the top. The top cymbal here is a very, very old K that I got in New York after I moved here about probably 10 years ago. And it is from the 40s. If you want to know the stamp type, it's 2B. So it's from the 40s. And this one came from Maxwell's. I actually had to have the center hole drilled out larger because it was so old that it was meant to be hung from like a string or a strap. So I was able to check it out on a stand where they didn't have to do that. I liked it with my bottom cymbal that I take everywhere. And this is the pair. Things to note about this. First off, they're both hand-hammered cymbals. They're both in the old K tradition where one is sort of legitimate and one is a more modern interpretation of that. The old K itself, because they were not being that meticulous, it's undersized. It's about 13 3/4 of an inch. So it sits inside of any modern 14, just a little bit, which is cool for reasons that we'll talk about later. But now, here's where the crux of the thing is. This for me is my medium sound. This is medium in pitch overall for me, and I like it for just about everything. Now, when I was younger, I imagined that if I needed to go louder, softer, darker, brighter, I needed more sets of hi-hats. But I've come to the conclusion that when I find a top that makes me happy, what I would much rather do is focus on trying out different bottom cymbals between that. And that's resulted in me owning 2 top hi-hat cymbals and a pile of bottom hi-hat cymbals because they change the behavior so much without changing the feel. And I like the feel of the cymbal, so why change it? All right, let's hear this pair a little bit more in context. Now down to specifics. The top cymbal here is 718 grams, and the bottom cymbal, the Masterwork, is around 1180. So we've got, a few hundred grams difference, not a whole pound, but a substantial difference. Lighter tops, heavier bottoms, sort of the norm. It's landed that way in modern times. Back when old Ks were getting shipped in, it was just a bin of 14s and you put them together until you were happy with the pair. And eventually people realized they were generally putting heavier ones on the bottom. So it kind of does the sound that we're expecting. There are other people I know who like top and bottom that are very close in weight. It's not always a thing that I do, but sometimes in the studio you really just don't want a lot of high end coming from this thing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to swap it out for a much lighter bottom cymbal. Everything feels softer, everything feels easier to move. The foot sound even feels a little bit squishier because there's just literally less metal. The whole mechanics of them working together is just less stiff. The bottom cymbal here is a Jesse Simpson bottom hi-hat cymbal, or I'm using it for a bottom hi-hat cymbal that is 830 grams, around 830. So we're, we're about 50 grams difference. They're essentially the same weight. The profile is a little bit different. The bell shape is a little bit different. The hammering is significantly different. So it's not as though we're using identical cymbals that are just different in weight. There's more to it than that. And another bottom cymbal of this same weight isn't necessarily going to give you the same behavior. But as you can see, like the feel is a little different on top with the stick. The sound is a lot different. The foot feel also a little different. But at the end of the day, I still feel like I'm playing my hi-hat cymbals. I'm still looking at the same top, and the vibe overall is the same. Now, before we switch it up again, let's hear a little bit more of this combination. Way over in the other direction. What if I want these to be bright? I want them to clap together a little bit more when they're wide open. I'm hitting them really hard. Maybe I need a louder foot sound or a louder splash sound. Or, and this isn't a thing that always comes up, when they're just touching softly and you're kind of playing loose hi-hats, how much sustain do you want? Do you want each of those hits to be long, or do you want them to kind of crumple under their own weight really quick? With the thin pair, they die pretty fast. Let's throw something really heavy under there. This is my most recent hi-hat acquisition. I actually got this in Manhattan at the Music Inn, and it's a wild place with all sorts of strange stuff in their basement. And I found on like a handle like this, what's known as an early American K. So this is a Zildjian K that was hand hammered by cymbal smiths, but in America in the 80s. And if I remember correctly, they were bringing people over from over there to work on those who had the knowledge to do the hand hammering. Don't quote me on that. That's just what I was told. And the curious thing about these is that in this time period, there was a combination of them going after jazzy sounding rides, but then also going after relatively dark sounds that were a lot heavier. This cymbal is ridiculously heavy. It's heavier, it's about 1,600 grams, and it is heavier than most of my crash cymbals. It's actually almost as heavy as the 20s from an earlier video that we were doing, like the lighter 20s. So what you get when you move to a cymbal like this is a little less character from the hammering and a lot more tone, a lot more sustain. There's a note in there, and like you can hear it. And for situations where I still want this feel in the top and I still want to kind of have like a jazzy vibe and some darkness and some complexity, but I want to throw it, I just put this cymbal underneath there. And it really just jacks it up. Let's hear this one a little bit more. Now let's put these three back to back. Here we go. Now for me, playing them, they don't feel like I've completely switched over, say, from like paper thin old cymbals to brand new beats or something like that. But at the same time, there's a dramatic shift just by moving one of them. And this is one of the funner things that I like to do when I do go to cymbal shops, is to go through the loose hi-hat cymbals bin, whether you're at your local shop or wherever it is. If they have loose cymbals, if they have used stuff, just going in and trying different things out. It can completely change the sound of the top cymbal, but you're not getting into paying like $300 or $400 or $500 or more for a set of brand new cymbals. Which, the other thing about this is, I'm a big proponent of used cymbals, especially if you can hear them in person. Like, that's the big overarching thing with that. But look for ones that are played in, because they're also where they're going to go. They're settled in. They're probably not going to change a whole lot. So if you like it, it's going to stay there, which is true of this K. This is 80 years old, and it sounds the same, apart from the paper tag wearing off. It sounds the same from the day that I got it. It makes me happy every time I play it, and it's really like my favorite thing. As an aside, we heard the Jesse Simpson bottom with this earlier. I bought a set. They've been in videos here before. If I take that top with these three bottoms, it's a whole other set of things. So it completely changes the recipe. It changes the feel. That cymbal, even though it's the same weight as this K, everything's louder with that one. It's just what it is. So mixing the hi-hat, literally mixing the hi-hat, like audio-wise too, to make it do the job that you want it to do. That about wraps it up. I hope you found that interesting. I'm super curious about your mixing and matching if you do that. I do it with all the sets that I've had basically since I started playing here in New York, because basically it's a cheaper way to try out new sounds than to buy new sets. Secondarily, if you are kind of into having separate sets, I'm also curious to know how you arrived at that and what you do with them, if it's for different jobs or if it's for recording versus live stuff. You know, all of these things translate to all those situations. We just have to pick the right tool for the job. I think that's good.
Oh yeah, that was super concise.
Excellent.